That this is one of the insects that got listed because as handsome as the adult beetle is, its mode of making a living is really revolting. But it's also really important because this will bring me to one of these little ecology segues. I'm going to have a bunch of these just to sort of like introduce you to the insects and what they do. Decomposition is a big part of what insects will do for us. Ants till up an amazing amount of soil, and they'll move nutrients in and out of the soil column. Termites, you know, that's these little guys down here. They chew up wood. If they weren't around, we'd have big chunks of wood. Cellulose is really hard to digest, and they have really neat organisms in their guts that help them break it down. But I think there's a really cool story about why insects and decomposition are so important, based on a bad decision that we made in the 1700s to bring cattle to Australia. This was something that people were living there, cattle were food. They brought cattle to Australia in the 1700s, but they didn't really think about what would happen to all of their dung. And so the organisms in Australia, they didn't co-evolve with these large mammals, with these large bits of dung that they would leave around. And when they got cattle there, they found lots of forage land. Cattle were very happy, but nothing would decompose their poop. And cattle won't eat nasty grass. Not only that, there's a lot of flies that are parasites of cattle that will live in dung when it's not decomposed. So they ended up with these enormous populations of parasites that were attacking their cattle. Their cattle were getting sick because there was no food to eat, because they won't eat dirty grass. And the solution to this was to bring over some of these guys, dung beetles. That's what they do. I mean, this is what dung beetles do. And so, not that I'm a big fan of introducing other species to island continents. I think it's probably a bad move, but you're going to bring a big cow over, it's going to make a lot of cow dung, and you need to have these little critters that are good at breaking that down in order to make that work out in that new ecosystem. This is just a big boring table from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, but I think that it points out a couple of really interesting parts about how we think about conservation, and show you that it's not just here in America that we're not thinking about what insects are a part of that. This little column here, you can see the number of species that have been described of animals. Mammals, we've got 5,000 and some odd. And this is how many of it have been evaluated. So the IUCN makes these lists of, they'll evaluate species, determine if they're threatened with extinction, and put out these red lists so that countries that house these organisms can actually start to do something about trying to preserve them. And we've looked at all of the mammals, we've looked at all of the birds, and we have looked at very, very few of the insects. So we've got almost 1 million insects, 73% of all animals, but only 4% of the animals that have been evaluated are actually insects. So they're very low on our list of things to look at. And then the number gets really scary over here, because this is the column that tells you that the number of the ones that they have evaluated that are actually threatened with extinction. And that's half of the ones that they've looked at. So that's 700 or 600 organisms there that are actually threatened with extinction that have been looked at. So insects are something that we might want to pay a little bit more attention to. I just want to make a plug for these guys because I think they're awesome, being a bug crazy person. These guys have been doing insect conservation for 40 years. Not only insects, but also mollusks and slugs and snails and all of those icky slimy things that don't have spines. They put together species reviews and petition governments to protect organisms. But more importantly, they put out lots of really cool publications. And so you can go to their website and you can find how to manage your golf course for pollinators, which is a ridiculous notion, but I wish